Oh,
Hello.
there's a bot talking to us. Hi, Angela. Nice to see you here. Welcome, welcome. We're just letting a few more log in and then we'll get started because we have a lot on the agenda tonight. Hey, Lars. Laura, hi. All the way in WA. Probably never allowed to Victoria ever again. Karen. Oh, this is nice. All right. Well, I think we're going to make a start because as an old teacher, I don't reward lateness. So can I first welcome you all and invite you to turn your cameras on if you have the bandwidth for it so that we can see each other, but understand that not everybody's bandwidth supports that. And keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, hopefully. Welcome, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining tonight from the traditional and ongoing and unceded lands of the Dja Dja Wurrung, and pay my respects to elders past and present. And I would invite all of you to note whose country you're on in the chat so we can get a bit of the lay of the land over there. And I've already said cameras on, sound off, please. I'd like to welcome you all. We've got farmers and allies and academics. In fact, I think some of us might be being studied here. We're going to end up in somebody's theses, I'm sure. There's abattoir owners and operators, and there's local and state, and I think we might even have some UN level governance present tonight. So we've got a lot of interest in the topic. As we all know, abattoirs are a real problem around Australia and around the globe, as are other processing facilities that are increasingly owned by corporate structures. So for those of you who don't know about the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance, we're an organization of farmers and allies from across the food system. And we are working together to take back control of the food system into the hands of the people, in short. A very short way of explaining what food sovereignty is comes from the Nyéléni Declaration in 2007 in Mali. And it talks about how food sovereignty focuses on food for people. It values food providers. It localizes food systems. It puts control locally. It builds knowledge and skills, and it works with nature. And I know from those of you I know who are here tonight, these are all values that you hold dear as well. And that's why we work together collectively to try and ensure that everybody has the right to democratically control our own food and agriculture systems. So if you're not a member of AFSA, we certainly strongly recommend that you become one. And that helps us with the numbers when we're talking to government, like all of them here tonight, to say that we have thousands of people who are supporting the positions we put forward. I want to start by saying we don't want to rehearse the fact that we have a problem with not enough access to abattoirs. I think you're here because you know that. So let's not spend too much of our precious time talking about the known need for small scale abattoirs, because it's demonstrated. And some people here are already building new abattoirs. Some here have already built and operate abattoirs. We have a wealth of experience, and that's why, like with everything AFSA does, we're trying to run this as a roundtable where we'll get to hear from those who already know about the planning stages or about the operating stages and get as much knowledge on the table so we can all learn from each other together. But we don't need to ask whether there's a problem with enough abattoirs. There's a problem. AFSA has been working on this problem for about 5 years. And my husband Stuart and I did a tour in America, partially funded by the Victorian government, actually, to tour 8 small-scale abattoirs. We subsequently prepared a report called Dead Local Meat. And I think Amita is going to put that into the chat in a minute. If you haven't read it already, it explains what our findings were then. Our findings actually have kind of continued to develop, as you would expect, since 2017. And at the time, we thought that mobile abattoirs were probably not viable to run, like as a viable business. we've since seen with the entrance of Provenir and some other small-scale mobile abattoirs on the scene, that we were pretty much right in terms of small-scale direct sales farmers aren't going to be able to be easily serviced by that business model. However, it is doing a great job of getting animals to be able to be slaughtered on farm, and increasing animal welfare for those sort of small to medium scale farmers who are not selling their product directly to others. And then it goes under the Provenir brand. There are others, Provenir is just one. And I know Christopher Howe was meant to be here tonight. I hope that he is, because he'll have lots of insights to share with us too. We ran Abattoir Roundtables in 2017 and 18 as well at the Slow Meat gatherings that we held in those years. And we had experienced abattoir operators here for that too. So we've been building the knowledge base, but it's still a fledgling movement here. In America, the movement is much further developed. So you have something called the Niche Meat Processors Assistance Network, NMPAN. And I strongly recommend having a look at their website, getting onto their listserv. They share a lot of resources about the designs for small-scale abattoirs, the operating issues. They run regular webinars, but because they're in America, they're constantly at 2 a.m. And so, but they record some of them, so you can learn from them. There's also a UK report that Amita's going to share in the chat in a moment, making recommendations about how to make small-scale abattoirs better supported in the UK context. And one of those is a very simple planning revision, which I'll share with you what we've put forward in Victoria just recently. And also in Canada, they're making great strides. And my understanding there is some legislation just went through to allow, I think specifically in Alberta, to allow on-farm slaughter for sale directly to eaters nearby. So that's more progressive than most of what we're seeing in other parts of the world, to allow a lower bar for regulation to slaughter on farm and sell directly to your neighbors, for example. We're not even really advocating for that at this stage in Australia, though I don't think we should think that it's impossible. In terms of our proposed reforms in Victoria, we just sent something through to the Victorian Minister for Agriculture. In Victoria, the farming zone has rural industry as a scheduled use, but it excludes abattoirs and sawmills. So we have just suggested a very simple reform, which would exclude abattoirs with a throughput of more than 1,000 livestock units, as they say, per year. So that's the exemption we're seeking in Victoria, to allow very small scale slaughter on farm to be considered part of rural industry and not an actual change of use of the property. We've literally just submitted that reform request. So we'll keep people posted in how we go. But of course, the planning requirements are not the only barrier to these things. There's a lot more. So on my list of, and it's just mine, and we're really open to what others are. On my list, I see we have two sort of groups of who we have. Those of us who need abattoirs and don't have access to those who are here who are already running those abattoirs. And we have those who are already running abattoirs and can share wisdom and insight about what that looks like for them. And in terms of the greenfield builds like Loz is working on up on the Murray, there are questions around how you fund these things, the planning controls, how do you run a viable business? How do you cooperate with others to build such a facility? So I think there's a lot of questions there for those of us who are looking to build these things, especially when you're doing it collaboratively with others. There's like another layer of complexity. And then for those who run the existing ones, I already had a pre-chat with Beck Lind, who runs the Huon Valley Meats down in Tasmania. And she said, biosecurity, animal welfare, food safety, and OH&S are her 4 things always on her mind to be on top of. And I would add to that again, whether you're building one or already running one, the question of operating costs, staffing profiles, and also Beck pointed out clear communications for product coming in and product going out are the sorts of concerns that she always has. So from there, I thought I'd throw it out to perhaps first actually to go back to the planning stages. I would love to hear from Loz, if you don't mind me putting you on the spot, about how you're going with the project up there, because Loz she's midstream with her team up there, and they've got funding and they've started works. So
yeah,
Where you at, Laz?
Okay. Oh, thanks. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yep, cool. Okay. So we started our project 5 years ago as well, around the time when we had local closures of abattoirs. So it's obviously a very common theme across Australia at the moment. In the meantime, we'd been to New Zealand actually and seen the abattoirs over there and just how small and frequent they are. And we actually visited a really tiny one, probably no bigger than a kitchen. And, you know, it was a really good insight into how simple an operation can be. Then we came home and made connections with Tablelands Meats up at Canowindra. And that was great as well. So he built his in a shearing shed. So I think I guess our journey has been one because of closures, and we acted on that immediately as a group of people. We called a meeting at home, and it was about bringing together the right people in our region that would benefit from having an abattoir. And we all agreed that day, 5 years ago, that we would go forth and build a micro abattoir. We didn't know how we were going to fund it, but we knew that something eventually would pop up for that, and we would just work it out in the long run. Over the years, we did 2 feasibility studies with Australian micro abattoirs, which was great. And then the right bucket of money came along. We connected with the council by then, which have been really proactive in the project. We had done the hard yards, so we worked out that it was feasible. It was feasible enough, actually, with 8 producers to run through their animals for the year. So that would cover wages, electricity, and it was a reasonable kill fee too. So that was really promising for us to know that we didn't have to get a lot of people on board. We just needed that core group of people that were processing regularly. And so over the years, obviously, people have dropped off, closed their businesses, and new people have started. So we've seen a real, already before we've even got a thing in the ground, like we've noticed that the numbers are always going to fluctuate. So my advice there would be just always have that buffer into how much you think you will process, and have the chiller space to enable busy times, and then being able to cope, like being able to operate without shutting down, just on a minimal kill rate, and minimum kill run. And you need to work out sort of what those things are. But I'm happy to share our feasibility study with AFSA so you guys can use it. Everything that we're doing, we want to be able to come to you guys. This is how we've done it. Might not apply to every shire, but it'll definitely help you sort of get runs on the board. The council came on board when Growing Local Economies Fund came. I can't remember if it was federal or state, but at the same time, there was also some community drought funding. We're still in drought up here. And then there was another little bucket of money that I can't remember what the name was now, but we applied for all of them, just hoping that we would get one of them, and we bloody got the lot. So we've got around $2 million to build the abattoir, which is insane. So it gives us scope then to put all the things in that we want to, trial and test, like a closed loop waste system. Using black soldier flies from GoTerra to process the waste. So for us, it's really about, I'll give you some numbers in a minute, mate. It's really about creating a state-of-the-art facility, but on a really small scale. So we've seen simple operations and we've seen big operations. We want something in the middle that we can bring people to and share that with them and go, this is how we've done it. We would love to be able to see you guys do that in that area. And once we get to a certain size, our plan as a group is to come to other areas and actually help them get their abattoirs off the ground. And it starts with that real collaboration with people like-minded. You all need to be on the same page about what you want. And it's one group that I've ever been involved with that has had the focus the whole way through. It's a bit like AFSA really, but just that focus has not changed, and we still need that service, and we can see that now, like it's becoming a bigger issue in Australia. So that's our story. We've picked a tender. Steve from Tablelands Meats is actually a successful tender, so he's coming down to manage the build. He's going to use local tradies. and he'll have a tradies meeting to get all those tradies on board and to make sure that he can work with them, trust them as tradies to do the right thing. And then he'll actually stay on board for the first 12 months, actually, is sort of our advisor to make sure that everything's running smoothly. And he'll do the first lot of kill runs with us to make sure that, you know, the staff are good. So our biggest worries now, or our biggest things that we need to sort out are, you know, obviously reporting, because it's all grant money. The first lot of money was allocated and needs to be spent by the 30th of June. So it's the Community Drought Fund, which was $375. So we've put water tanks in, we've got water to the tanks, we've done a power upgrade, we're doing the roadworks, and all those pre-works will be covered by that fund. And then the next lot of funding will come from the bigger bucket, and that's infrastructure. So it's pretty full on, but we wouldn't have been able to get this far if we didn't have the council on board. And I know that's not going to happen in every region. So we are still really involved. We sort of call the shots, but the council, they do the quotes and they do all that sort of technical rah-rah, because we're farmers. Our capacity will be around, at the most, will be 10 beef a day, or like 50 pigs. It's not massive, but it's big enough to cope with busy times, and it'll enable us to grow to a certain point. But once we get to that capacity, that'll be it. We don't want to make it any bigger. We want to keep it small scale and keep that. We don't want to get faster and more efficient. We want to make sure that the kills are, you know, super humane and clean and really well done, and everyone can collect their offal and offer that service as well, because we all know how much we miss out on our offal sales. So hopefully this will change the system for here, and hopefully we will, as a group, be able to help change systems in everyone else's regions with the help of you guys as well. So that's our story. It's pretty exciting, but we hope to be up and running by Christmas. Famous last words.
Hey. That's so good, Loz. Well done. I've seen you working at this for many years, and it's great seeing the progress and seeing you get the grant funding. It's fantastic. And thanks for the offer to share the feasibility stuff too, because it's that kind of stuff that's incredibly helpful, obviously.
It is, and it does cost a lot of money, and I know that not every group has been fortunate as us. Like, we had to set up a cooperative, which also costs money, and it's been really costly. We've had to pour more money in a few different times. So that grant money is only for pre-works and then infrastructure. It doesn't get you all the legal fees, and it doesn't it didn't buy us any land. So we've had to do all that on our own. And but you know, it's you know, a couple of $1,000 or $5,000 isn't much for an abattoir, is it really? When
right,
5 minutes down the road. It's 5 minutes down the road. And we definitely firmly believe that, like, the small scale abattoirs are the way to go, because you're right, like the mobile trucks are great, but they don't enable paddock to plate producers or home killers to go out and do their own thing. I mean, it's great for, like, we can't all have a mobile abattoir. That's just not feasible. We worked around that, and it wasn't going to work. And so definitely lots of small scale abattoirs. It's going to happen.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, in other countries, it's already happening. We're a little bit further behind than some of the others. We have a bit more tyranny of distance than some of the other countries. But it's not only possible, like, it's exactly how it was until not that long ago. So one of the things that I keep reminding people of is that what we're doing is not remotely new. It's actually just a return to how things were before JBS bought everything, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing. And I think, like, power to the small guys. This is our opportunity to, you know, get runs on the board. And once there's a couple of them up and running, it's going to be much more acceptable for other states. Like, I don't know what Queensland's up to, but is there anyone from Queensland here tonight?
Yeah, we've got, so Bellasato is here. Dan's able to talk about their on-farm poultry abattoir. And I think we've also got Southampton with us from WA, who also have an on-farm poultry abattoir. But I wanted to just from you jump quickly to Stephen, who is building your abattoir and who has been running Tablelands for, well, Stephen can tell us how long he's been running it for. Where are you, Stephen? Can we see you? I know you're here. No? I can still see him. Steve, maybe he stepped away from the computer for a minute. We can come back to Steve then, and maybe jump to Beck Lind, who's running Huon Valley Meats down in Tasmania, and might have some things to share just about, for those of us who are looking at whether it's cooperative or independent little abattoirs, what are some of your like top tips about what to think about when you're looking at running small scale slaughter? Beck? Is everyone going to step away from their computers right when I say their names? No, there's Beck.
How's that?
Yep, great.
Great. I went through a very similar journey to you, Loz, but I ended up landing in an abattoir that was already existing that I got to take over rather than having to do all the legwork that you've just been doing to build your own. But that was the path that I was heading on. Here in Tassie, we had only 30 years ago, we probably had 45 and probably 60 small scale abattoirs, and now there's only 6 that I know of in the state. And yet our demographic of farmers hasn't really changed. We've still got probably a really high density of small scale farmers, and their ability to access medium to large abattoirs is obviously very limited. And I grow a specialty beef, so I grow a horned animal. So being able to access an abattoir that will accept the type of stock that I grow was, you know, that was my business. If I couldn't get them processed, then I didn't have a business. So I guess, you know, if anyone's got any questions about all of the things that can go wrong potentially in setting up an abattoir, not so much from the building phase, I don't really have any experience in that, but definitely from everything from HR and staffing and, you know, your basic finance and your throughput and your chiller capacities and the types of chillers that you need in order to load out several times a week, because it's great you're aiming to have 10 beef maximum per day there, Loz, but what are your fridges generally going to be able to hold, and how long are you going to hold them for? Because as soon as you've got somebody who wants to hold their beef for more than 30 days, then you've got to account for the fact that that chiller space is taken up for that amount of time. So as soon as you've got 8 producers that want to dry age their product, then your chiller space is taken up. So there's just all of these different things that I hadn't really thought of, that, you know, I've been doing this for 2 years now, and if anyone had asked me 5 years ago if I'd be running an abattoir with up to 20 employees and doing what I do now, I would not have put that on the radar at all. So it's been a very steep learning curve, but I've loved every minute of it. So I'm absolutely open to any questions that anyone has.
Amazing. And can I, can I do a quick question about, do you work with any local butchers on doing the cutting, or do you do the cutting there as well?
Yeah, so I'm actually just about to open a separate boning room to the abattoir. So just a brief rundown on our abattoir. So we have a capacity to kill up to 80 beef a week. We can do about 450 sheep and about 50 pigs. That seems pretty comfortable without overloading the chillers or doing load out too many crazy times or around the clock. That's just what our fridge capacity is. And your capacity to kill is always constrained by your ability to move things out of your fridges. So the bottleneck will always be your fridges. And sorry, what was the question there, Loz?
Oh, just if you're working with any local butchers, we've got provisions to put in a boning room there, just because we'll be doing chickens and stuff, and packaging offal and that. But we don't know if we're going to provide that service of doing the aging and stuff, because we've got facilities in Barham, including myself, that are offering to do service for that. So I just wondered, you know, how much extra capacity have you had to put in for the dry age chillers? And does that?
Yeah, we're pretty fortunate. We do have a significant amount of chiller space that we hadn't even turned on until a couple of months ago. But we work with, I think we've got 43% of Southern Tasmania's butchers are serviced by our abattoir, and that's generally the whole carcass trade. There's probably only 4 or 5 of those butchers that are actually getting us to do any breaking in some form for it. And that's usually just a 6-way split on a lamb, and then their butchers break it down when it gets into the shop. Obviously, we quarter animals before they leave to go to the butcher shop, and then the new facility that we're opening soon, we will actually be able to offer a classic boxed meat style product, knowing and understanding that most butchers now, they don't have the skill sets within their retail establishments to fully break down beef carcasses. They're, they've been trained as retail butchers for so long that they don't have that whole carcass experience anymore. And so we're looking to help both train up. We're going to be working with TAFE to make sure that all butchers who go through the TAFE system now can come and learn whole body butchery, which they don't get to do in their shops anymore. And so, yeah, we do work with a significant amount of butchers, but I really want to be able to offer that boxed meat product, because what we sell is a higher quality than what comes out of the bigger processors to the north of the state and everywhere else.
Yeah, I did wonder that. We're sort of thinking that maybe the cooperative will eventually become a brand in itself if there's like excess and people want boxed meat. But I don't know if anyone from Greenham's is here, but Greenham have just they've just branded and trademarking Murray Plains Meat as a label that they're selling into Aldi. So we'll have to think of another name.
That's annoying.
Yeah, really annoying. Like, I don't lose my cool at much, but I really fucking lost it over that. Fuck.
Anyway, that's another whole
kick in the teeth. Oh yeah, no, I was going to talk to you about that another day.
Yeah,
so
we need to talk about that planning thing too. But anyway,
thanks, Beck.
Stephen, I wonder if you could share some of your sort of top insights, or what people who are thinking of doing what you do need to be thinking about. Stephen, I can see you. I know you're here, but you're on mute.
Does that make any difference?
It does.
G'day.
You see, I'm not a technocrat, but I get by. G'day, Lars. How you going, darling? See you on Friday.
G'day, mate.
I'll see you on Friday.
Yeah, cool.
Okay.
Excellent.
Now, if everybody's on board and can hear what I'm saying, we started our abattoir in 2012. We became an all-species processor in 2013, which means we do everything from quail and rabbit right through to emu and buffalo. And anything in between, provided it comes from a farm base, we process. I've been auditing abattoirs since 1984 as an external auditor for a lot of reasons. So I've been around the traps, and I'm a meat inspector. That's my qualification in the job. What we have is a unique facility here, which allows people to bring their animals or group of different species of animals to our facility, have them killed, chilled, cut and packed, ready for retail. We have two parts of our business. One is that we are vertically integrated. We have our own farms, we have our own abattoir, and we have our own meat retail outlet in Orange. The other part is that we have horizontal extensions where we have contract growers on one side, and we have on the other side people who wish to bring their meat to us to kill, chill, cut and pack for them to sell in either the farmers markets or for their own domestic product. Now, the thing that we have to bear in mind, in my opinion, is the fact that the standards, the Australian standards, speak about the hygienic production of meat, red meat or whatever colour it may be, for human consumption. And so while a lot of abattoirs, as they call themselves, or mobile suppliers of services are there, do they meet the necessary hygienic production, which means do they have the right microbiological assessment of the carcass at the end? Have they assessed the carcass wash water before they started? This is where I have a great degree of difficulty with some of the other providers where there are not such stringent provisions. As an abattoir, I have auditors come in here at $350 an hour every 6 months to audit my facility. I have people who come in here wanting to do my water sampling every 6 months. If I'm not up to scratch, I'm closed down. But there are a lot of organisations out there who do not meet that criteria. And I believe that to be at the top of the tree, you have to do the top of the table stuff. We are ranked by the DPI in New South Wales as 100% compliant with all the regulatory requirements of the Act and the standards. We have our own food safety program, HACCP programs. We have our own safe work processes. I have a team of staff who are endorsed by qualification as slaughtermen. We have gone to the nth degree to make sure that we do it properly as a micro abattoir. We will never ever put Tees or JBS out of business. That's not our plan. Our plan is only to provide a service to the smaller provider of meat product, which they wish to supply to their family and friends or their own farmers market or their own niche group. We draw from Canowindra product as far away as Braidwood and Bega, and from the Southern Highlands around Picton, as far up as Dubbo and, you know, wherever, because they know they can bring in their 4 lambs, 2 chickens, 3 sheep, or cow or whatever, and we will attend to that with the respect it needs. I have great respect for the smaller processor. When I started this business, I was using a larger abattoir to get my product processed. The problem was I wasn't always getting my stuff back. That was a real problem to me. I couldn't get my carcasses. I'd send in heavyweight Dorpers and I'd get back scungy crossbreeds. I couldn't get my offal. I couldn't get the things I wanted. And when I complained, they said, well, take your business elsewhere. So I said, okay, I will. So I went and I studied and I trained as a meat inspector. So, because to get a license to run an abattoir, you need a lot of background. One is my years of experience auditing abattoirs, and the other thing is knowing what the criteria are for hygienic production for human consumption, both of red and white meat. So I studied and trained as a meat inspector while I was building my abattoir. Now, bear in mind that building an abattoir is easy. Any mug can do it. But keeping your license is bloody hard. Keeping your license is harder than getting it. And there are a lot of people out there who have gone about the business the wrong way around. They've thought about building their abattoir. They've got a product they want to sell, but they don't necessarily have the criteria to run it. So the first thing is to get the proper information on board. If you're going to build an abattoir, you've got to have your HACCP, you've got to have your safe work instructions, you've got to have your food safety program, you've got to have meat inspectors, you've got to have endorsed slaughtermen, you've got to have all these things. And I have made sure that at our facility we have it. Now, I've supplied contract services to 3 other builders who have all decided to pull out because they couldn't meet the dot points. Councils have each got different interpretations on how they go about it. I'm working with Loz and Barham to get their facility on board. I'm in Barham on Friday, so I'll meet you there, Loz. The thing is that with the whole process, it's interpretation of the regulation, and different councils and different planners interpret it differently. And that's not what's meant. It should be that there is one rule. And I get really, really irritated when people try to interpret the rule according to personal preference, not as to the way it should be. Now, with my abattoir, we are in a rural area, zoned where livestock processing is okay. Then it was subdivided to allow other people to move into our area and build houses. They're now complaining they don't want an abattoir in their area. I was here first. They can go away. But what happens is the councils have to attend to those different complaints. So we have to make sure our noise, our odour, our traffic movements, our livestock noise, all the other things that go with running a business in this area are complied with. And with mobile facilities coming in and out, we have one fella down the road who uses a mobile butchery. Now, his meat cannot be sold to anybody else but the grower. But he likes to think that he's an abattoir on wheels, but he's not. There's a very big difference between an abattoir under the Act and an abattoir in someone else's mind. Not everyone can kill an animal with a legal right to sell it in New South Wales. And so what has to happen is people need to rule out the fact that meat for sale has to be stamped. And if it doesn't have the inspector's stamp, then it's not legal to sell. And when you get people going around the trap, so I come back to my first point, have they done water studies for microbiological assessment? If I pull up my truck in someone's paddock outside their shearing shed, have they got clean water? Is there a dead possum on the roof, dead rat in the gutter? Has that crap got into the water? Does that water meet clean, hygienic E. coli standards? Does the meat at the end of the day, when I swab it, have to be done? So when the issue of meat hygiene is concerned, we have to swab the butt and the neck of every animal that we put out. Sorry, we have to, a batch of every animal that goes out, to the salmonella, E. coli, listeria and whatever, to make sure that they are meeting the criteria. We have our own mini lab on site. But not all these other facilities that are popping up as approved arrangements meet that standard. And that is a great concern to me. I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in my abattoir. The problem is other people are talking about doing it on the cheap and compromising the standard, which then affects human health. And if you haven't got that as your priority, forget it, stay out of it.
That's really helpful, Stephen. I think the question around food safety standards, I think Loz and I would have had some experience building boning rooms and being fairly novice when we started and thinking that we knew what we were doing. But when you look back at some of the mistakes you made because you didn't actually have all the same training as somebody like you who came into it as a meat inspector. And I mean, I wouldn't say that I did anything particularly dangerous, but I know a lot more now than I did when I opened our boning room. And so we've chosen to go into our abattoir build here at Jonai by doing our meat inspectors licenses first. And actually there are 8 of us here in the region who've signed up to do it together so that all the farmers who might possibly use our facility will be trained so they understand those standards that you're talking about equally. And I think it's something that we underestimate when we come to this from like the food sovereignty movement, where you haven't come from a hospitality background or a food service background or a slaughter background, and you don't understand some of those standards until you go and get some training. And I think it's really wise to be pointing out how serious and important those things are.
When you kill someone from food poisoning, how are you going to explain your lack of standard?
100%. I agree. Yep.
And that's the point I come back to every time.
Yeah. On some of the other points you made around different interpretations of planning, by the way, on your audits, I'm jealous because I'm in Victoria. So my audits for a boning room, not even a slaughter facility, are every 3 months, not every 6. And so I would love to have 6 monthly audits. That would be amazing. But no, on some of the other ones around interpretation and planning, it's certainly something that AFSA is here for. And that's what our legal defense fund is for, is to provide advice and guidance when people are running up against bad interpretation or inconsistent interpretation. And we're having regular, sorry?
Bear in mind that legal defense does not cover incompetence.
No, I know. We can't. There's a lot of government here, so I'm going to be real nice, but it is a problem. So the different interpretations of things, and we do what we can to deal with that problem, state by state, but council by council. But we are here for that. We have legal advice on staff here to help with those problems. And
my advice to everyone is, if you don't know what you're doing, stay out of the business.
Yep. Well, some others in the business.
Or get someone who knows what they're doing to direct you in the right pathway, so you're not going to kill people.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And it's great that you're helping Loz with that you got the tender and you're going to be helping with that project, because having somebody experienced, not just somebody who knows how to build something, but somebody who's run an abattoir and has your experience.
I've got 2 others on the boil.
Great. Good. That's good news.
It's fantastic. That's the biggest problem like we're facing as producers is that level of governance and adhering to the Food Safety Act. I mean, that is my biggest worry going forward. And I don't necessarily want to become a meat inspector, but, you know, I wanted to ask you, Tammy, like, how long is it going to take you guys to do yours? How long does that take? What's the time commitment to do that? And how do you...
Actually, because we're working together, our trainer is sort of fast tracking us a little bit. And I think we're going to have it done in, well, it'll be 12 to 18 months to be finished.
Okay.
So something that could be 3 years, but it will do it in 12 to 18 months. And part of that is because we're already a cohesive group, and we're often meeting here, and we have little meat inspector study groups, and it's pretty great.
Oh my God.
It's super.
It's crazy.
So you should think about it.
Finding staff, finding competent staff is going to be tricky.
If you need a hand with your training, sing out, because we host people here to do their courses, so they get actually practical hands-on in the inspection processes.
Fantastic.
I've had several people here from
Can we do
other
that?
sites who've come in purely to get in-house experience on how to go through the process of inspecting an animal and making sure it's done right.
Yep. Well, I'll take you up on that when I'm there in July. Can I get involved in some slaughter that day?
We can arrange anything. What do you want? Red meat, white meat, all meats?
Red meat mostly. Yeah.
We can look after
Anyway,
you.
we're getting distracted. Sorry, everyone. Can we hear? I'd love to hear from some more on-farm builds, because I know that Stephen's example is one that's on-farm, but also services lots of other farms. And that's what we're hoping to do here at Joe and I, is to service just about sort of 5 to 10 of the farms that already use our boning room. So really, really small, but here on the farm for more than just us. But in the case of Dan from Bellisato, you built an abattoir that is just for your own facility. It's unique because you're up in far north Queensland and you had a very particular need. And poultry abattoirs are a particular need everywhere. But would you like to tell us a bit about your experience, Dan?
Yeah, I'll give a quick rundown on what we do and I guess why. For those that don't know, we're in Warragame and Nawagi lands. So that's between Townsville and Cairns in North Queensland. We built a small scale abattoir on farm. We've been operating that abattoir now for 3.5 years. We were in a bit of a unique position where we don't have any processors whatsoever in the north of Queensland that will do poultry. We did have one that we had arranged to do poultry when we first moved to farm 5.5 years ago. Unfortunately, that fell through just when we had our first batch of birds ready to go. And we had the tough call of, do we want to do poultry meat or not, and decided we did. So from the day we decided, yes, we're going to do poultry on farm, to having an abattoir constructed and passed out was 18 months. Self-funded, so we basically poured everything we had into the building. I was never a gambling person until I started farming and built an abattoir. But yeah, basically we're very small scale. We're only a couple of thousand birds a year. In terms of processing and costs, horrendously expensive to run a facility putting through only a couple of thousand birds a year, but we're a very niche market and we're not your normal chicken. So we run a breed of poultry called a summer lab, slow growing, completely different taste and flavour profile to the Ross Cobb industrial meat birds. And we're very, very open with our customers with what it costs us to grow a bird and what it costs us to produce a bird. So when we engage with our CSA, we basically show them a pie chart breaking down exactly what it costs us to produce and grow their birds, so they know where every single dollar goes. In terms of staffing, there's only 3 of us there on kill day. Yes, whilst those costs are horrendously high, we're now in control of every aspect of our poultry production, from the breeding of our stock, the hatchery management, the growing of the birds on pasture, and we're also therefore responsible for taking that animal's life at the end of the day and giving it as good a death as what it has had as good a life. So it was one thing that was very tough. I'm not like a lot of other producers in the room where you have to take your animals to abattoir and then give them to somebody else and walk away and leave that ultimate task to somebody else. We've been very fortunate to do that ourselves, and I don't think I'd want it any other way. Also gives us a lot of flexibility in terms of what we can do with our end product. So we do all of our butchery on farm. So we do whole birds that are from feet on right through to the beak, still on the bird, as well as all the cuts, breakdown, and value adding. And that's about it for us. So tomorrow's a kill day for us. Up bright and early in the morning, get the birds crated, and we're pretty much a one day a week we run our processing. So there's probably a few hours a day before in preparation, full day in the abattoir for the three of us, and then a few hours the following day to manage all the waste streams. So we actually have no real waste that leaves our facility. Actually, I should correct that. The amount of rubbish we generate from the kill day, you could fit in the palm of your hand. So all of the waste, feathers, viscera, blood is value added on farm and returned back to pasture to feed the soils. So the only waste we actually generate is the plastic wrapping that's around the compostable paper towels that we wipe our hands with. Our test swabs that we have to do for our pH testing of our wash and rinse water in the abattoir. And that's about it.
That is such a good news story, Dan. I love that. And I think it's really important to point out those benefits as well of on-farm slaughter and the ability to reduce or eliminate almost waste and turn surplus to eating requirements into resources on farm. Yep. So that's really great. Some might have seen, I posted a photo tonight. Actually, we got a grant from the Victorian government to help fund our abattoir design and the composting drum. And so the I don't know how big it is. Stuart could tell you how it's huge. I could walk through it, and that's just arrived for Stuart to build our rotating composting drum to deal with the surplus materials coming through to be used here on farm as well. So starting at that end as well.
Awesome.
Thank you. Now, I'm conscious there might be other abattoir operators in the room, but I'm also conscious people probably have some burning questions, and you're in a roundtable with people who know things that you want to know. So is there, that's right, and Loz has just pointed out there are volume triggers for planning. So if you can keep under a certain volume of waste, it doesn't trigger the EPA permit, which is true. In Victoria even, which is hard to believe. So does anyone have questions for some of the more experienced folks here, or something you want to workshop about your own plans for an abattoir? How about we open it up to further discussion? Nobody. Yes, Kathy Palmer. The old-fashioned actual hand up. I like that.
I couldn't get my, I was trying to press the hand to go up and it just would not go up. Hi, thanks. This has been fantastic. My question is that I don't actually want to do my own abattoir on farm. I'm a dairy farmer, and I keep all my cows and calves together, so I don't send bobby calves off and so forth. And I'm looking for more of humane solutions. So my thing is more about if every area could look at doing one of these abattoirs, not mobile. I've spoken to Provenir and so forth. What kind of cost is it compared to like the normal abattoir kill that you go to? Does anyone have any feedback to say like it's 3 times the price or 4 times the price? And even like Tammy, where you are, I'm in Northern Victoria, so I'm out past Shepparton. Do all these little abattoirs that Loz has got going, and yourself, Tammy, do they have the ability to do all different species?
In most cases, yes. I think we should answer your question, though, get some of those who are running these abattoirs to tell us about their costs, their kill costs. What are your slaughter fees? Both Stephen and Beck could answer that in terms of the multi-species abattoirs.
Yeah, I can definitely answer some of that for you. I think you'll actually find it's not so much whether or not they will slaughter your animals, but you really struggle to get access to the kill floor on a lot of premises. So the smaller abattoirs are key to being able to develop relationships for sustainable businesses. because if you go to any of the bigger abattoirs that are just purely throughput driven, Joe and Mary down the road with their 4 sheep a year and their 6 cows, their business doesn't mean anything to them. If you're putting that through every week, then they might see you as a viable option. But it's actually accessing and maintaining access to kill floors that is the hard thing. I think in Victoria at the moment, you're averaging about $190 a head just for a kill. But it's really difficult to get to a kill floor. And this is just from talking to a few other processor people that are trying to get animals processed for their boning rooms at some of the bigger abattoirs. And that's where that abattoir also will keep the head, the hides, all the offals and all the trims. So it's a really, if you take all that into account.
So what is the kill fee on a beef at your place, Beck?
For us, if you're putting through less than 10 a week, it's about $130 a head.
Right. Okay, that's really comparable with us in Victoria. Hardwicks, we're paying around about 100 a head. But they keep the hide is worth nothing now, but they keep the hide and the head.
Oh, $30, $40. They'll get paid by the tanner for $30 to $40 a piece. So it's not worth nothing.
I don't know how is it, but I don't know what.
And
so that's really competitive. Yeah.
And all of our offals, for example, they're minimum $10 a kilo. So you get an average of about 30 kilos of offals from an animal. So it makes a difference.
Absolutely. Oh, just being able to get your offal, because in so many of these abattoirs, the big industrial ones, we can't. So that has to do with export certification, and that we're not certified for export. How about for you, Stephen? Do you want to share what the slaughter fees are at Tablelands? Or he stepped away.
We do other species as well while we're waiting for Stephen. So for us to process a sheep, for example, is about $28. Then a pig standard is $50, and we won't start the pig run up for a minimum of 15. So we need 15 pigs in the door to make it worthwhile, because we use a gas-powered hot water system. So that's just us sort of starting to break even at 15 pigs.
Hey Beck, what do you do with your waste? Do you generate gas or anything from your waste to power your hot water, or have you got systems in place?
Not yet. It's all in the pipeline. Pardon the pun. Then at the moment though, and that's probably something really good to talk about. So when I first took on this enterprise, we were paying around closer to $7,000 a month to have our waste taken away. And that's because the previous operator had not complied with their EPN, and they'd done some things that made it impossible for us to look after waste on site properly. Once we rectified that problem, we're down to about $3,000 a month of the hard waste that we're not yet doing anything with. We want to install a bone char plant to deal with the bones rather than going down the blood and bone route. We have just secured more land around us. So we've gone from a 3-hectare site to a 12-hectare site, and that's going to enable us to compost on site effectively. And then we're getting solar installed as our power. We're very fortunate that we're on a very secure power line, but just in case, we're getting a solar system put in as well. And then we treat our own wastewater on site. And I've been working with a company to develop some new filtration systems for us, because we're an organically certified plant as well. That I sent away our testing to a guy in South Africa who's helping me design the system. And he wrote back and said, I think you've sent me the wrong samples. You've sent me the water samples for your inlet water. I'm like, no, that's definitely our wastewater sampling out of our 3rd stage aerobic pond. And he's like, well, if that water was in South Africa, we'd be drinking it. So it's a very effective on-site wastewater management that we have. But once I can roll that into being for our biosolids as well, then we'll become much more of a closed loop. And I'm also looking for a tanner to move on site and start a tannery. So that's awesome.
Amazing.
We're all in on search for the tanners, aren't we? We're lucky. There's actually one in Ballarat, so we're pretty lucky. There's a really old tannery down there.
Is that Greenall's?
Yeah. Andrew, you've had your hand up for a while. Andrew Hearn.
Yep. Hi, thank you. Good to see you, Tammy,
Good
and
to see
others.
you.
So where I'm on the mid-north coast of New South Wales. We lost our abattoir just to pork, and we've been dancing with setting up abattoir purely for pigs. So I'd like information, given that there's beef and sheep processors in adjoining valleys. I'm after some information or just feedback on viability of single species abattoir.
I should have said, I don't think Michael or Alex have come from Extraordinary Pork. Does anyone?
Yeah,
see?
yeah. I know Michael.
Yeah, so Michael's the only one I know who's been doing single species and successfully, but with a few difficulties in terms of, I mean, you would know, they're very far from a larger market, and they've actually just bought another farm and they're moving the abattoir across. So
Okay.
they've got a few changes afoot. But certainly Michael's open to having a phone call about that. And it was actually their model that inspired us to think it was possible here as well. But we don't need to do single species because we have cattle as well. And some of our farming mates have got sheep. So we'll be doing multi-species for sure. But it's definitely possible. And we saw it in America too, some single species ones. It comes down to throughput and staffing profile, I think, are the key things.
Yeah.
And one thing for those who haven't seen the Dead Local Meat report that we wrote back in 2017, part of what makes poultry hard, like Dan was referring to, it takes as many hands on a chicken carcass as it does a beef carcass. But you look at the volume of meat that comes off the carcass. So obviously you can move a chicken more quickly through. However, it is a numbers game at that stage. If you're processing, if you need that many people to process the animals, then it's better to have a larger animal, basically.
Yeah, sort of. I'd kind of disagree a little bit because our margins on pork is actually higher than on beef. So 2 people will take about 30 minutes to process a beef. I can do 6 pigs in that time. And pigs yield are significantly better than beef. When in terms of most cuts that come off a pork are high value. You don't really have any throwaway cuts, whereas beef, you struggle to move all of those things like your silver sides and the cuts that are deemed secondary cuts. So you're often left with big bulk and only 10% of the high value cuts on a beef versus 70% of high value cuts on a pork. So running the numbers, I think a single species pork abattoir is great, but to me the risk profile is significant. So if you think of African swine fever, just one hint of that in Australia and you'll be shut down. So, and you don't have anything else. If you've got a permanent workforce, and that's what you should be gunning for, because let's just say the ice addicts don't make great casuals, then if you've got a permanent workforce, you're going to be employing them anyway. And it's a really cruel thing to see in our communities now, where here in Tasmania, we had a cyber attack on, I think it was JBS last week. So their computer system broke. And now there's a whole bunch of families out there that don't know what the future is for them, where they're going to get paid, whether they're going to have to use their own holidays to cover this week because they haven't been able to process because somebody couldn't turn the computers on. So, if you think of it, if you're gunning to build a good, permanent and reliable and respected workforce, then, having a single species abattoir and something going wrong and then you're not being able to do anything is a big financial risk. You can't swing and give it to something else.
Financial risk, full stop.
It applies to a lot more than slaughter, obviously. I mean, that's the thing about diversified farming systems. So
can I just add that? Hello.
Yep, Stephen.
Yeah, can I just add that being multi-species minimises the single species risks. What we find is that we're processing hundreds and hundreds of chickens every week. And some weeks we might process a lot of pork, some weeks we might do a lot of beef. But for those employees of ours, we have the ability to spread their skills across multi-species. And by being a multi-species place, we're not drawing down on only one market. And that's the key to my view of the micro abattoir thing, is that you have to be able to not necessarily be all things to all people, but you have to be able to provide skills and services that will keep an employee workforce employed. If you don't have enough people on any given day, you can not produce anything. If you've got sufficient skilled people across a range of species, then you can actually move people from one role to another. Now, all my staff here can move from one species to another quite happily because that's the way they've been trained. And when you go to single species, you've only got to have a hiccup, like the recent computer hack, or maybe a customer doesn't bring their animals in this week because they've had a bog in the paddock or whatever. It's the big problem is you minimize the risk by being multi-species.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Yeah,
that's
the problem we've got is that we've got abattoirs that do multi-species next to us. They just don't do pigs.
Yeah, we do everything, so that's fine.
Yeah, and the revival of small-scale abattoirs will bring that back, because a lot of the multi-species abattoirs that stopped doing pigs stopped it because of being export facilities, and so they get halal certification and they kick the pigs out. Whereas if you
Well, we're not halal. We have refused to go down the halal pathway. We have it on our butchery shops. All the counters are displayed that we are naturally grown, chemical-free, naturally processed, and non-halal. And we have not bothered with going down that pathway to accommodate a minority population. We offer what we do for people who want to eat meat, whether they're one way or the other. And I have a lot of Muslims who buy my meat simply because it's good.
Excellent. Beck,
You might have some luck, Andrew, though, if you look at the profile of how the other abattoirs close to you work. Because actually to build a room that processes animals and have it standing there doesn't cost you that much money. The cost, there's 70% of your costs are in the day-to-day running. So if you've got people in the door and the lights on, then that's what will be the significant cost. You could build a pig room, a 10 square meter pig room with a tumbler that costs about $28,000. That'll pull your pigs in, drop it down from the roof. You'll have them already coming out polished and pretty at the other end and put into a cool room. So, for literally a couple of $100,000, you could build a pig room. And then if you've got abattoirs that work close by that were or are multi-species, they've probably got experienced process workers that used to kill pigs and that could come and work for you a couple of days a week if you needed, or even just a couple of days a month.
Got that covered.
Yeah. So it's physically having the facility and capacity to do it. If it's not going to be around the clock business, you can build something relatively feasibly and just use it as it's required. It might only operate for 6 months a year. It might only operate, 1 day a month.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Great. Now I'm conscious we're actually at our normal time for how long these sessions go for. But if there's still a will for those here to carry on and have more, if you have more questions or comments, I'm sure my dinner will wait if yours will. So are there more questions or comments? I would say actually in response to the thing about the tumbler, Michael at Extraordinary Pork had a lot of trouble with that because of his power supply. And he ended up having to put in a generator, which cost about as much as the tumbler. And then it was still a bit of a problem. So we've been looking at that for here too, and we've realized that we don't have the power supply for it either. And we're trying to work out what I think the thing is, I'd rather pay the labor to do the deherring, skilled labor, than buy the machines.
Well, we put in a 100 kVA generator. Sorry, we put in a 100 kVA generator to drive our scalded deherer, and it cost a total of less than $50,000 to do it. And we can process, one pig every 5 minutes without any drama. So, there's a lot of people in the retail of the meat business who can sell you very, very expensive equipment because they only sell it once or twice a year. You've got to look at your source of material supply. And a lot of problems are that people overcapitalize and underutilize their equipment. And when you overcapitalize and underutilize, you're going to go down the pathway to being broke real quick.
Yeah.
So with what we've got, we can put, 20, 30 pigs through in about, 2 to 3 hours without any drama. And it cost me next to nothing to put it together. When you look at the overall return, people need to do their sums and they need to research their suppliers, because I've been quoted by people who supply equipment on the basis they've got a $50,000 a year salary to cover on top of the equipment they supply once or twice a year. And it's just absolute crap. People need to be responsible in their purchasing when they start looking at running a business.
Yep, I agree. It's why I'm not going to have a DHERA. But we've got 2 questions in the chat as well that are sort of related, actually. So Aaron's asked, is anyone operating a truly micro on-farm abattoir like Dan from Belisado, but with beef and sheep? Grow, kill, process, and sell via something like a CSA, interested in how small is too small. And then Brooke's question is, well, it's a bit different, but is there such a thing as a CSA for micro producers to access a share of a yearly micro abattoir allocation? I can respond to Brooks to say that what we're doing here is probably similar to that. The idea that those who are already using our boning room would have a share in the abattoir. It'd be a facility owned here by us, but they would buy into having access to it. And like Loz is doing with her facility, ours will have a cap on throughput, which will be even smaller than Loz's because we're in a smaller site. And because we're in the farming zone and it would be a change of use if we had too many people coming to use it. It needs to be a low, basically a low traffic situation. But I think it's a really good idea, the idea of doing a sort of CSA in a little micro abs on farms. In Australia, I'm not sure whether there are any, aside from our poultry farmers who have processing on farm. I'm not sure, aside from extraordinary pork, if there's anyone else who's doing just 1 or 2 species on their own farm. You've got that in America, but again, it's usually mostly poultry. You don't see it much for other species. Even though, like Beck said, it's not expensive to build the facility. You're talking, some of the ones we saw in America, they're just sheds. They're very, very simple builds. And then it's all about how much does it cost you to operate it? How many staff do you need to run it for the day? What are your startup costs and shutting down costs? Yeah. So
in Australia, it's all to do with the hygienic outcome. If you don't have a hygienic outcome, it doesn't matter what your shed is. It doesn't matter.
Wait, sorry. Keith Berry also says that he's an electrical engineer specializing in power generation and renewables. Happy to advise people on power requirements, especially if my beef can be processed. So a bit of a trade there, Keith. Could we get your email? Could you perhaps email admin at AFSA and we'll have a chat offline about how you might be able to support that movement. We're about to install an entire solar system here on farm that also has to operate all this equipment. So that would be a worthy chat because I think a lot of the farmers are looking at those sorts of solutions.
Well, at my facility, we have wind, gas, and grid electricity.
Yeah.
So we use all.
Great.
Talk a little bit to Aaron's question, if I can. So there is a few smaller abattoirs in North Queensland that do beef, sheep, and pork and pigs, but none of them just do their own animals. They all do small amounts of contract kill for others. So yep. At least in our region, I don't know any that are purely their own farm.
Thanks, Dan. And Loz?
Hey, Tammy, with the solar stuff, mate, we've got 50 kilowatts on our roof at work. So that, for our boning room and stuff, so that powers 2 enormous cool rooms. Like the chiller capacity can hold about 50 animals. It's not just for us, that's for when the abattoir goes ahead. So I want to talk to you about how you're going to split up your, sorry, that's nice. I want to see how you're going to split up your, how you're going to offer that share to people, because that's something that we're looking to do at the shed quite openly, actually, because it's a massive facility to have on our own. I think it could only be feasible with other people in it. So the 50 kilowatts on the roof does the 2 cool rooms plus a walk-in freezer, like a reefer, plus a ham production room, plus an air drying room, plus all the equipment. And then there's 40 kilowatts of batteries that we haven't quite drained yet.
Oh, awesome.
So if you need help with
Yeah, I'd love to have that.
So that's
conversation.
yeah, that's about.
Yeah, because that's a
We'll get the
similar
reporting
setup,
back soon,
no,
so we'll be able to
it's
share that with you
it's
too.
similar setup that we're considering. So I'd love to have that power conversation.
Yeah, cool. No worries. Happy to help.
Great. Now, I think we do need to wrap up. It is nearly pushing towards 8, and probably most of you have not had dinner. And we've been talking about meat, so who isn't hungry? So I would just like to, Amita's prompted me in the chat, like in the private chat, that I'm meant to do a membership call out again, because that's the right thing to do. We're a membership organization. And for those of you, if you're not already members of the Australian Food Sovereignty Alliance, we'd certainly love to have your name in the list to use when we go to government and say it's a longer list every time that we have one of these sessions, and build some more solidarity. And we like to say, you know, that we have the numbers and they have the money, but you literally don't have the numbers unless people sign up and support the organization. So to keep these sort of things going, we'd love to see more members and let other people know. Also, all of the solidarity sessions that started at the start of the pandemic, they've all been recorded. And so they're on the AFSA YouTube channel. If you want to catch up on any of the prior ones, I think actually Amita could maybe put a link to it in the chat, that we did it on CSA. We've done it on collectivizing against extractive industries on farmland. We've done it on the rise of tech in farming. And anyway, it's been a very broad spectrum of topics of interest. So catch up on any that you've missed on there, and let us know if there's something else that you think that we should be discussing. You know, if there's another topic that the people need to talk about, let us know and we'll slot it into the schedule, because I think we'll keep doing this for a very long time. It's wonderful being able to get everyone together in these sessions without having to be physically proximate. It's been a bit of a blessing to realize we can do it without being in gatherings all the time. So, and for those further north, AFSA has a bit of an agroecology roadshow coming up, where Stuart and I are hitting the road and heading for Queensland, and we're going to run sessions with some of the farmers up there. We're going to catch up with a few people. I'm going to catch up with Stephen on the way up, and I'm going to catch up with Jared on the way up at Eagle Rise. Going to be in Orange, seeing Carrie Cochran. So there are going to be quite a few visits and informal farmer chats, chances to catch up and find out from each other what other people are doing and share more information. So catch up with the schedule on the AFSA website. And I hope to see lots of you. I mean, that's assuming they let us out of the state. You know, this is all a work in progress. And meanwhile, I hope you're all staying really safe wherever you are and thriving. And if you have any concerns around farming or the food system and you need some help, let AFSA know, because that's what we're here for. And thanks to all of you out there doing such good work. It was a pleasure to hear your stories and hear your questions. So thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thanks,
Good night,
Tammy.
everybody. Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya.